Have you ever had the feeling of being left aside by the very people who should stand by your side the most? Have you devoted your whole life to building something only to, in the end, realize they were quietly trying to push you out? In today's video, you're going to hear the real and powerful story of Isabel Rojas, a 67-year-old woman who built an empire from scratch. She was betrayed by her own children, but what they didn't expect is that Isabel still had an ace up her sleeve. What looked like an ending was actually the start of a twist no one could control. If you've ever felt discarded, underestimated, or betrayed by the ones you loved the most, this story will touch you deeply. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a story of family justice. It is about lucidity, dignity, in the exact moment when a mother stops asking for respect and starts acting. Would you have that courage? I am Isabel Rojas, I am 67 years old, and until recently, I thought I had already lived everything I needed to arrive. For more than 3 decades, my life revolved around my company, my house, and my children. I raised the 3 of them practically alone after their father walked out the door and never looked back. While men doubted me, I made soaps with herbs I grew in the backyard and sold them door to door. Years later, that lavender scent I mixed with my own hands became the symbol of a national brand. Essência Rojas became more than a business. It was my 4th child, and I thought I was leaving a beautiful legacy. Only, a legacy, I learned to late, can also turn into bargaining chips. It was a Monday, late autumn, one of those days when the sky dawns pale and the wind beaches against the windows as if it wants to say something. I was on the porch with my hibiscus tea mug, an old habit I never gave up, reading the latest company reports. I always do that on Mondays. I like it to start the week knowing where we stood, even if they no longer include me decisions like before. It was there, my eyes still fixed on a performance chart for the Southern stores, that I got Marina's message. My phone vibrated only once. I opened it. I read it. E for a second, I thought I had read it wrong. Mamá, legado é o momento. Prepara los documentos para firmar tu salida. That was it. A sentence written with surgical coldness. No good morning. Not even a question mark. It was an order, not an invitation. I kept staring at the screen as if waiting for the letters to change on their own, but they didn't. The wind that had been beating at the window now seemed to blow inside me. And the curious thing is, I didn't cry. I didn't get up from the chair. I didn't call anyone. I just took a deep breath, closed the messaging aplicativo, and went to my office. I sat at the darkwood desk I bought when I still served clients in my garage. I set the phone gently beside the photo frame with an old picture of the 3 of them: Rodrigo with crooked teeth, Marina with crooked braids, Tomás with eyes that took after mine. I picked up my black notebook, where I write decisions that can't be taken back, and wrote, Day 6, 9:47, received the message. Timoteo Act. After that, I dialed Alejandro's number, my lawyer. He answered the way he always does. Senhora Rojas, en que puedo servirla? E I said, prepare the sale. De 60%. Urgently. E silently. There was no anger in my voice. There was something colder. Lucidity. Alejandro stayed silent for a few seconds. He asked, known me since the time I still signed contracts by hand, fingers stained with essential oil. He knew that if I was asking that, something very serious had happened. Understood, he replied. I asked him to contact the European fund that had shown interest months before, a discreet, solid group that valued the brand. Above all, didn't ask too many questions. Lately, I had already been predicting that something like this could happen. Not that I wanted to sell, never, but I learned the hard way that the worst mistake a woman who builds empires can make is to think her children will respect them just because they carry her surname. While he handled the paperwork, I stayed there, in the same chair, for almost an hour. I only got up when the sun was already hitting the bookshelf I inherited from my grandmother. I went to the kitchen, brewed strong coffee, and let the kettle whistle longer than necessary. It was my way of hearing some familiar sound on a day that no longer felt like mine. Inside, what I felt was a strange kind of grieving, not for leaving the company but for my children's silence. They didn't call me to talk. They didn't try to understand my side. They gave me an ultimatum as if I were an inconvenience. That, more than anything, hurt. I remembered when Marina was needing a magic little string bracelets to sell at school. I bought them all, secretly, just so she did think she was doing great. I remembered Rodrigo, who cried when I missed school performances because I was at the fair selling soaps, and Tomás, who always said one day he was going to be MOS president. Well, they made it, and maybe that was my biggest mistake. I raised children to be partners, but they forgot to be children first. Over time, they became more executives than humans. And when I realized, they no longer called me mother. They called me Isabel Imitis. At 2:30 p.m., Alejandro sent me a message, contract signed, transfer confirmed. From now on, control is theirs. He meant theirs referring to the fund. I read it as mine, because, ironically, by pushing me out of the company, my children gave me back to myself. I looked out the window and saw a butterfly landing on the Boston fern I planted years ago. It was dark blue, the kind that seems to have come out of an old book. In that instant, I felt a strange relief. For the first time in a long time, no one expected me to swallow my opinion and mask discomfort with a smile. I had chosen to leave the way I wanted. What happened next was almost cinematic. Around 5 p.m., my phone started vibrating. Once, twice, 3 times, until I lost count. On the screen appeared names I hadn't seen in weeks: Rodrigo, Marina, Tomás, then Executive Office, Campinas HQ. Even an overseas number I recognized as a known partner from the sustainable packaging sector. I didn't answer, not a single call. I sat in the armchair in the living room, staring at the device as if it were a wounded animal trying to move. It was funny. They had spent months ignoring me. In just a few hours they turned me into the most sought-after person in Brazil. At 5:46 p.m., a message came from Tomás. Mom, we need to talk. Urgent. Then another from Marina. What have you done? And finally one from Rodrigo. Call now, please. I put the phone in the drawer and went to make my dinner. Salted chayote with brown rice, nothing special. But I ate with the feeling of chewing my own freedom. Each bite was an unspoken answer, a hurt swallowed in silence. It was curious how silence could be more powerful than any scream. In that night, silence was my response. For the first time in a long time, I let myself not solve everything. After dinner, I sat in the porch hammock with a blanket over my shoulders. The sky was clear, and the full moon looked like it had been drawn in pencil. There, staring into the void, I began to view the last few months with different eyes. Small decisions they made without me. Meetings scheduled at the last minute, the impatient faces when I asked something. I thought it was me nitpicking, or being overprotective. Now I understand they'd been preparing my exit for a long time. They just didn't expect my reply. They thought I would accept his silence, that I would sign, that I would walk away quietly, as if my story could be closed with a PDF. That night, I slept as I hadn't in years. The phone kept ringing past midnight, but I muted it. I dreamed of my grandmother, the one who taught me to make chestnut soap as a child. She appeared young, with a headscarf in her hair, telling me, never accept less than what you built with your own hands. I woke up at 6, as always, but with something different inside me. It wasn't the hurt. It was clarity. That sale wasn't the revenge. It was an act of respect for myself. The next morning, I drank my hibiscus tea sitting in the usual spot, but with a different posture. For the first time in a long time, I didn't open the reports. Instead, I picked up an old letter from my husband, the one he left when he went away. It was short, cowardly, poorly written. I need to find my freedom, he said. I was the one who dealt with his absence in the constant presence of 3 scared kids. Now, so many years later, I realized I also deserved that so-called freedom. Not to run away but to choose. And that's what I did. I chose to leave the place where I was no longer welcome, with dignity. Around 9 a.m., Marina showed up in front of my house. She was in gym clothes, as if she had come running, but her face was hidden not from exhaustion, from anger. She clapped, shouted my name as if I were deaf. I watched through a slit in the curtain, but it didn't help. I sat on the couch and waited. Then came the insistent doorbell rings. And then, a knot shoved under the door. You shouldn't have done this to us. This isn't fair. Fair. The word echoed like a bad joke. What they did to me. Then, how do you push a mother away? Is you call it fair? It didn't reply. Not that day, nor the following days. Rodrigo called so much that my carrier sent me a notification asking if I wanted to block persistent calls. I found it funny. Tomás, who was always the quietest, sent a different message. If it was hurt Feliz, we can talk. Just don't exclude us like this. It almost got me, but it wasn't about hurt. It was about stance, about learning, even at 67, that no love justifies humiliation. I was raised to believe a mother. And yours everything, that a mother nullifies herself, that a mother is a foundation, but a foundation is not a doormat. At that moment, I was tired of being stepped on in the name of love. On the 3rd day, the company Esbor sent me a formal email asking for an alignment meeting with the new shareholders. I smiled. Funny how everything changes when control slips from the hands of those who thought they ruled everything. I knew the fund would demand changes. They were discreet but firm. They didn't accept nepotism, didn't allow decisions based on blood ties. Over time, my children would realize you don't play with legacy and inheritance isn't an automatic right. It is the consequence of respect. They wanted to exclude me from the game. I ended up losing the board. At the end of that week, I went to the factory. I didn't tell anyone. I entered through the back gate, like I did at the beginning, when I still delivered soaps and market bags. The gatekeeper, a man named Zaka, recognized me right away. Mrs. Isabel, what a nice surprise, he said, with a broad, sincere smile. I smiled back. It was good to be acknowledged by those who'd always been there, even when the insiders had already forgotten me. I walked the corridors in silence. The same light-colored chilies, the same smell of lavender mixed with rosemary. That was still mine, even if the papers said otherwise. In the production room, I saw Claudia, who has been with me for over 20 years. She was wearing an apron, gloves stained with chamomile essence, patiently stirring a giant mixer. When she saw me, she dropped everything and came to hug me. It was a tight hug, the kind that asks no explanation. I heard what happened. Look, I understand. Getting tired of being ignored is also a kind of grieving, right? I just nodded. Sometimes, there is no need to say anything. She took me to the break room, served me coffee with cassava biscuit, and sat with me, talking about simple things. For a while, I felt human again. Not just the founder, but Isabel. Driving home, I thought about everything I gave up to build the brand. Years of sleepless nights, tight budgets, recycled clothes, exhaustion hidden behind hidden lipstick. When someone said your company is a success, I smiled, but inside I remembered how much it hurt. And that is what hurt the most now. Seeing my own children treat each as if each had been born ready, as if they inherited something from someone instead of inventing each from scratch. They never knew what each is like to sell soap to a door with a child on your hip. It may be that is why they didn't know how to respect the root. The next week, I received a formal letter from the company council, now under new management, inviting me to a symbolic tribute to the founder ceremony. I found it grotesquely cynical, but I went. I arrived dressed in white, hair up, dark lipstick. study eyes. When I entered the auditorium, all eyes turned to me with a mix of guilt, curiosity, and fear. My children were in the front row. Rodrigo looked at the floor. Marina crossed her arms, uncomfortable. Tomás, yes. He looked me in the eyes and in them there was something like regret. But you wasn't there seeking reconciliation. I was there to make clear they hadn't destroyed me. They had only freed me. On stage, they set a table with artificial flowers, a microphone that squeaked. They called me founder and eternal inspiration of the Essência Rojas brand. A young presenter, who clearly didn't even know my surname right, read a rehearsed text about gratitude and family values. Hearing that made me want to laugh or cry, but I stood firm until they handed me the microphone. Then I spoke, not to provoke, not to hurt. I spoke as I always have, truthfully. When I started this company, I washed diapers in pots at the same time. I never had a business plan, only faith. In what I built it wasn't just a brand, it was a life choice. Today, I formally strip myself of this post. But know this, dignity isn't transferred by contract. It is upheld or lost. Each one will know, in the silence of conscience, what they did with theirs. The auditorium fell silent for long seconds. Then, a tepid, protocol applause. My children didn't stand up. They didn't come to hug me. Only Tomás, at the end, approached, lightly touched my arm, and whispered, "Sorry, Mom." I looked at him tenderly but didn't answer, because sometimes, forgiving is saying nothing is letting time do its work. I went back home later, took off my shoes, lit a jasmine incense, and sat on my porch. I felt something inside me close with a click. A chapter finished. No resentment, but with the firmness of someone who learned to choose herself. The days that followed were silent but not lonely. I got calls from former employees, messages from old suppliers, even from customers who followed the brand as a journey from the start. They all said roughly the same. You were brave, but courage is a pretty name for the pain you decide not to accept anymore. I started writing memoirs. Not to publish, but for me, a way not to forget who I was before being Rodrigo's mother, the successful entrepreneur, the founder. I was the girl who planted Mindy her mother's yard and dreamed of perfuming the world. Sometimes, I still catch myself wondering if they regret it. If, at some point, they feel the absence of their mother, not the executive, but the woman who packed lunches for them to sneak into the company, pretending it was from a restaurant. But I learned not to expect recognition from those who still don't understand the value of the silence that held the world together. Ye may not be there. I just learned love also has a limit. That staying whole, even with a cracked heart, is the greatest legacy a mother can leave. 1 month after that ceremony, the first concrete change at the company was announced. The fund decided to abolish inherited positions, catch perks, and review all supply contracts. My children, who always thought they had guaranteed seats, felt the weight of professionalization. Marina lost the marketing director post. Rodrigo began reporting to our board that didn't consider his surname. Tomás was reassigned to our technical area, something he at least mastered. He didn't rejoice at this, but he wasn't saddened either. It was life doing its job, separating blood ties from real competence. I got news through third parties. We never sat at the same table again. No Sunday lunch, no Christmas. A painful absence, but necessary, because some things only heal at a distance. I needed to listen to myself. Over time, the big house where I lived alone started to feel too spacious. Every room carried an echo, a memory, a swallowed scream. I decided, then, to sell. I bought a smaller apartment, with a sunny balcony, in the old downtown. It was a lively neighborhood, full of trees and people who sat at their gates. There, for the first time, long time, I felt I was living a place that fit me. In the new apartment, I planted basil on the balcony, hung night linen curtains, and placed photos of my youth on the shelf. With no one left to please, I went back to dressing as I wanted, colorful tunics, big necklaces, bare feet whenever possible. I rediscovered the pleasure of cooking for myself, of sleeping till the street sounds, of drinking coffee while reading old books underlined in pink. One day, a neighbor asked what I did. I answered, "Today, I take care of myself." After 40 years caring for others, it was the least I could do. She smiled, I knew she understood. One Sunday, walking through the city's craft fair, I saw a stall selling handmade soaps. I couldn't resist. I approached, picked one up. It was lavender with honey. The girl selling was young, hands stained with dye, speaking enthusiastically. I bought 3 bars. When she gave me the change, she said, "Someday, I want to have a shop of my own." I smiled. I wished her good luck. I didn't tell my story. I gave no advice. I just wished her happiness with what she built, that she never let anyone take from her what she made with love. Some nights I used to wake up thinking about the factory smell, the sound of essence drums being opened, the stifling heat of the production area. So many years that my body seems to carry them on the skin. It isn't a longing, it is a memory. Nike remembering an old love that taught a lot but also hurt. Sometimes I catch myself wanting to write a letter to my children, not to charge nor accuse, just to say, "Yemi fini, I hope you are it all." But whenever I think of putting each on paper, I remember their silence the moments I needed them most. I give up, not out of pride, out of self-preservation. It was that silence I learned to hear myself. I started attending a reading club near home. We hit 10 women, all over 60. We share books, recipes, and stories of losses that wouldn't fit in any board meeting. There, no one calls me founder, entrepreneur, nor asks me for favors. They call me Isabel. That's all. It is comforting to be just that. I met a lady named Dolores who lost her husband and never had children. She once told me, "You built a brand. I built a garden. In the end, everything is care." I never forgot that sentence, because it is true. What matters, deep though, is the care we put into things. Dolores taught me to make an orange peel liquor and a hand cream with Copaiba. I started producing again just for me, for friends, for the neighborhood. No brand, no label, just essence. One day, Thomas sent an email, not to talk about the company, but to see how I was. He said the new management was tough, that he missed the way I did things. I stared at the message for almost an hour. It was the first time months someone asked how I was and not what I intended to do. I didn't reply right away. I waited 3 days. Then I wrote, "Yemi fini, I hope you he becoming the man you always had the potential to be." He replied, "Mo, can I visit you?" I said a Sunday. I prepared a heart of palm pie he loved as a child. When the doorbell rang, I waited a few seconds to copy. I didn't know how it would be, but when I saw that Maria wrinkled sooty tired eyes, I realized he wasn't coming as an executive. He was coming as a son. He came in, hugged me tightly. We stayed silent for long minutes. Each was there, in that new living room, surrounded by plants and old scents, that I understood some reconciliations need no words, only presence. We talked little that day, nothing about contracts, company, or past decisions. Thomas told me about his youngest daughter, the struggle to balance work and family, the therapy he started after the restructuring. I listened attentively, but without intervening. I wanted him to feel he was talking to someone, not reporting. When he said goodbye, he kissed my forehead and said, "You here's to the heart of all this, you know." I replied with a calm smile and closed the door with a bittersweet feeling in my chest. Because yes, he was my son, but now, I was more than his mother. After Tomas's visit, I looked at my days with a different lightness. I no longer awaited phone calls. I imagined plans around Michis. I woke up early to walk the park, write the blue-covered notebook I bought at a street market. I watched the ladies chatting in the corner square. One of them, Dona Arminda, told me, "You have eyes of someone who saw the bottom of the well but didn't stay there." I laughed at the metaphor but understood what she meant. I descended many steps, but I climbed back up. And now, Each step of mine was mighty conscious, mighty mine. One of these days, I received an invitation to give a talk at a local university about female entrepreneurship. At first, I thought of declining. I no longer wanted to be under spotlights. But then I remembered how many young women dream of independency. Have no one to learn from. I accepted. I went wearing hijau lipstick, liking old chimes, and told my story in detail. I spoke of the pain of starting alone, the fear of failing, the night smelling of soapy tears. But I also spoke of the pride of having created something from nothing. And of how, sometimes, you need to lose everything to remember yourself. At the end of the talk, a girl approached with sparkling eyes. My mother always talked about you. She sold your soaps in the countryside. She said she learned it from you not to lower her head. That moved me. It wasn't about the company, nor the numbers. It was about the silent impact we leave on people without even knowing. I went home with my heart warmed. For the first time in a long while, I felt my story wasn't over. It had just switched tracks. And maybe, precisely because of that, it was more alive than ever. After the talk, other invitations came. Nothing grand discussion circles in community centers, meetings with young entrepreneurs, natural cosmetics workshops and public schools. I went without pretension, carrying my old notebooks in my box of essays. I spoke frankly, no magic formulas, saying that entrepreneurship is, above all, resistance, that resisting often means continuing even when no one else believes. In those conversations, I rediscovered a part of me that had been dormant, the woman who teaches with her hands, with her gaze, by example. Not the stage entrepreneur, but the real-life mentor. One afternoon, after one of those workshops, I stopped at a small cafe, almost hidden between two bookstores. I ordered tea and a slice of cornmeal cake. The waitress, a girl with a shy smile, looked at me and said, "You hear Isabel, right? From Cícia Rojas." I nodded with a discreet smile. She added, "My grandma used your creams until the end of her life. She said she felt they were made by a real woman." That moved me unexpectedly, because deep down, that is what I always wanted. That each product of mine carried a bit of truth, and that this truth touched someone. At home that night, I reread some old letters from my children. I kept everything in a eucalyptus-scented cardboard box. There were childhood drawings, Mother Day cards, thank you notes for going to the school meeting even though you were tired. There were the children I raised for the positions, the suits, the meeting rooms. I closed the box carefully and stored each again on the top shelf of the closet. Not as a burden, but as memory. Because even if the present is fractured, the past still holds its delicacies. And I learned to look at it without pain. The next day, I went to visit an old friend, Eloisa, who went through something similar. She was also removed from the company she helped build, also by her own children. We talked for hours. We cried a bit. We laughed a lot. In the late afternoon, she told me something that echoed in my head for days. You know, Isa, sometimes children grow so much they forget to look back. And sometimes we have to let them go, not for lack of love, but for excessive self-love. I went home with that phrase in my soul. That was it. Self-love. That is why I sold. That is why I chose myself. That night, I dreamed of my old backyard. I was young, my hair tied with a flowery scarf, and I was boiling eucalyptus leaves in a big pot while the children ran around, laughing. I woke up with a mixture of longing and peace. Because, in spite of everything, I was happy. Even on the hardest days, I did everything with love. And now, even with fewer people around, even with the silences and the breakups, I felt that I could still build beautiful things. Maybe not companies, nor fortunes, but encounters, presences, small moments full of truth. Then I decided to open my house to a group of women from the neighborhood. Every Wednesday afternoon, I served coffee, pão de queijo, and welcomed those who wanted to talk, learn how to make natural soap, or simply breathe a little. We called the gathering Quarta Essência. It became a ritual. People of all ages showed up, from young women seeking autonomy to older ladies rediscovering their talents. That gave me back a sense of purpose. No badge, no meeties, no targets. Just exchange. And that was what I needed. To exchange, not to compete. To teach, but also to listen. One day, on one of those Wednesdays, Marina showed up. She arrived unannounced, with a teasy expression on her face. The women looked at each other. I excused myself and took her out to the porch. She seemed smaller, more fragile. She stood, not knowing where to put her hands. I came to ask for your forgiveness, she said in a low voice. We messed up badly. I messed up. I felt my whole body react, not with anger, but with caution. I took a deep breath and asked, did you call me as a daughter or as a partner? She hesitated. As a daughter, because I don't know how to be that anymore without you thinking each esitolate. I looked into her eyes and said, then sit though. Let us start from there. We stayed on the porch for hours. Marina spoke of the pressure she felt, of the fights with her brothers, of the sleepless nights since the sale happened. I thought we were protecting you. Or maybe we just wanted to take the control we thought was ours by right. But we forgot who created all this. And we forgot who you were outside the Hall of Mother. I listened in silence. Each word of hers seemed to sew, with fine thread. The arderi hadini te even tried to amend anymore. It wasn't an apology that fixed everything, but it was a step. Steps, when taken with truth, make a difference. After that conversation, Marina started visiting me fairly often. Nothing major, a coffee a pão de queijo there, a few attempts at to talk. In the beginning, everything was still full of care, as if we were walking on unstable ground. But slowly, we lowered our defenses. She told me she had started therapy, that she had temporarily stepped away from her duties at the company, and that she was trying to understand where everything went off track. Her brothers, us. I listened attentively, but without hurry to fix what had broken all at once. Relationships crack over time, and they can only be stitched the same way, slowly. Rodrigo, on the other hand, remained silent. I received a single message from him, short, almost bureaucratic. I hope you hear well. He didn't answer, not out of rancor, but because I felt. He still spoke to me as someone drafting an email, not someone seeking reunion. Maybe it was his way of dealing with guilt. Or maybe he still wasn't ready. And that's okay. There comes a point in life when we understand we want to solve everything, not all bonds are remade, and that doesn't mean there was no love. It only means each one handles pain as they can. Ichimi, yes, is the true counselor. Tomás was the one who got closest. He called, asked how I was, sent photos of the girls, talked about the challenges of the new routine. He seemed relieved not to have to pretend to be what he wasn't anymore. I never wanted that position. I only accepted because it seemed the natural path, but it was eating me up inside. I understood. How many times had I also eaten myself up inside to keep everything standing? How many times had I smiled without wanting to, slept with back pain, made deliveries while crying at the wheel? The difference is that now I didn't do that for anyone anymore, not even for my children. And that was liberating. One day, Tomás came with his two daughters. The girls played with my plants, ate cassava biscuits, and asked me funny questions about how soap was made. I saw myself in them. I saw myself in me. While I watched the two of them laughing on the porch, Tomás looked at me and said, I wanted them to learn from you what each is to do things with love. I held back tears, because right there, in that moment, I understood that not everything was lost. Maybe I would never again have the same relationship with the three of them, but with him, at least, something new was born. A new form of motherhood. Without control, without hurt, only presence. As the months passed, I realized that the catchy, harsh, unexpected, almost cruel had actually been the beginning of a truer life. He, who had always been called strong, discovered that strength isn't resisting until the end, but knowing when to let go. I let go. I let go of the company, I let go of guilt. I let go of the roles given to me without asking if I still wanted them. I started to be more lightly. I slept better. My hair even stopped falling out. A neighbor told me, "You've got a different glow on your face." And I answered, "It's because now I exist for me." One day, walking through a park near home, I saw an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench. She had a lost loot and held a little handbag in her lap as if she carried the world there. I sat beside her without saying anything. After a few minutes, she asked me, "Do you also feel that, after a certain age, we become invisible?" And I said, "I used to, but not anymore, because I stopped waiting to be seen. I see myself." She smiled. A small corner of the mouth smiled, but each said everything. We shared a silent afternoon, full of dry leafy exchanges of glances. We each went back to our place with less loneliness. That encounter made me reflect a lot. For years, I was admired, in demand, consulted, then discarded. But the most dangerous moment was when I myself started to believe I was no longer needed. That's when everything began to unravel. When we forget our own value, others notice. They take advantage. Today, I no longer allow it. Not from children, not from strangers. Whoever wants to be close needs to understand that my company is neither obligation nor convenience. It's a choice. Each choice requires respect. That's what I teach the women in our quartas essência, that getting older isn't the disappearing, it's blooming at your own pace. In one of those gatherings, I received an anonymous note. It was handwritten on simple paper, but with words that hit me like an arrow. "You gave me the courage to leave a marriage that was erasing me. Thank you for existing." I don't know who wrote it. I never found out, but I kept the paper as a private trophy, because that was what moved me now, knowing that my pain, my choice, my silent path, could ignite something in another woman. I never thought that, at 67, my role in the world would be to start over. But maybe that's the beauty of life. It always gives us the chance to rewrite the ending. Some people ask me if I regret having sold the 60%, and the answer is always the same. No, because it wasn't an impulsive decision, nor made in the heat of the moment. It was, in fact, the most conscious action I had taken in decades. That company shaped me, hardened me, it gave me a voice. But there came a point when my voice echoed in an empty auditorium. In a legacy survives neglect. Selling wasn't giving up, it was reclaiming what was most precious, my time, my peace, my essence. The real one, not the one on the packaging. Sometimes I think about how my children tell this story. Do they say I was radical? That I overreacted? That I acted behind their backs? I don't know. Honestly, I stopped trying to control the narrative. Each person carries their own mirrors and decides where to eye them. I only hope that, one day, they see what I saw, that love, when it becomes a debt, is no longer love. That respect cannot be imposed by surname or power structure. It is earned, cultivated. If they understand that one day, great. If not, I will continue on my path in peace, because I no longer walk expecting applause. I walk by conscience. One random Sunday, I decided to visit my mother grave. I took flowers from my garden, the way she liked daisies and rosemary. I stayed there for a long time, sitting on the grass, silently talking to her. I said that I was well, that I was whole, and that I had finally understood what she always wanted to teach me with her simple way of living, though to become a prisoner of anything you yourself created. I left with wet eyes, but a calm chest, as if that moment were the final signature on the cycle that had begun with my children as a cold message. On the way back, I stopped at the bakery and bought a piece of corn cake. I ate it sitting in the square, watching children run, old ladies chatting. In that instant, I felt I was exactly where I should be, not at a boardroom table, nor among papers and charts, but there, in the middle of ordinary life, savoring the present without hurry. Because the greatest profit I gained in my whole journey was finding myself again. In that, no contract can take away. It was around that time that I began writing my memoirs with more dedication, not with the intention of publishing, nor of becoming a reference. It was a commitment to myself. Each chapter told not only my business story, but also the invisible moments, the days when I cried in the bathroom so as not to scare the children, the nights I sold soapy the rain with my blouse soaked, the birthdays I spent preparing spreadsheets. I wrote about fear, guilt, the joy of each small victory. Above all, about what it means to be a woman in an entrepreneur in a world that demands strength and surrender, but is shocked when we set to limits. Writing helped me remember who I was, be for the positions, be for the titles, even be for motherhood itself. I remembered the girl who loved the smell of wet earth, the teenager who wanted to be a biologist, the young woman who danced bolero with the radio at full volume while the children slept. I discovered that, for years, I had been dimming myself to fit what was expected of me. Now, I no longer fit any expectation. I felt owner of myself. Yes, there was freedom. One day, the coordinator of a cultural center invited me to do a sensory exhibition, sumps, plants, objects, and excerpts from my notebook of memories. I found the proposal beautiful. I did everything calmly, with the help of the women from the Quarta Essência group. We prepared the aromas, printed phrases on recycled paper, put together a small, welcoming space where each visitor could connect with their own memory. On the exhibition's first day, an elderly lady with crutches arrived, accompanied by her granddaughter. She picked up a fennel soap and said, "This scent reminds me of my mother. She used it when she combed my hair." I knew, right then, that I had done something that truly touched. On the way out, her granddaughter came to me and said, "You imagine my grandmother smile. She almost never smiles." That moved me, not because it was praise, but because it reminded me that my work had always been about that awakening something in someone. It wasn't about profit, nor about expansion. It was about touching, and seeing, even years after everything, that there was still room for that. Was like you recovering a piece of my soul I thought was lost. The exhibition stayed open for 2 weeks. On the last day, Marina showed up. This chimney, without tension on her face, without justifications, just her, with a notebook in her hands. "I wrote something for you," she said. I opened it right there. It was a letter, not of apologies, but of recognition. She spoke of what it was like to grow up seeing my strength, but also my exhaustion, of how, without realizing it, she and her brothers ended up reproducing what they promised never to repeat, silencing the woman who raised them. She said she didn't expect immediate forgiveness, but wanted me to know she was trying to be better. I hugged her. For the first time, without walls between us. After that day, something he balanced between us. We didn't go back to being commercial of margarine mother and daughter, but we became two adult women with real wounds and affections. Sometimes she came to visit me. Other times, we exchanged short, respectful messages. We discovered that intimacy can also be reborn slowly, with no need for grand gestures. She went back to doing yoga, brought me a book as a gift, started taking the girls to my workshops. One day she said, "If I had listened earlier, I would have learned to be mighty woman for trying to be boss." I answered, "If I had spoken earlier, maybe you would have understood sooner." But there was no place for blame. It was a place for restarting. Over time, I saw that even the voids have a function. They create space for the new, for what makes sense now. That new phase of life, that is what I sought, meaning. I started walking more slowly through the streets, listening to the birds, remembering the names of forgotten plants. Life seemed richer to me now, without the obligation to prove anything to anyone. I no longer needed to be the best. I only needed to be whole. Whole with myself, with whoever wanted to walk alongside, and with what was still to come. One night, while organizing my old notebooks, I found a note I wrote many years ago on a loose, yellowing page. It was written in Asti, probably on an exhausting day. It said, "I can't forget myself. I read that as someone who receives a message from the past, as if the Isabel from 30 years ago had left a reminder for the one now. E however painful the path had been, I realized that, in the end, I managed it. E didn't forget myself. I only took time to return. Little by little, my house became a meeting point, not only for the neighborhood women, but also for myself. There, among the porch plants and the glass jars full of seeds and seeds, I found my identity again. I set up a small improvised studio in the room that used to be just for guests. I would encounter shelves with simple utensils and an old radio that plays boleros on Sundays. I started producing again. But now without deadlines, without demand, without catalog, only for pleasure. Some friends said I should return to the market. I smiled. The market was no longer my place. My place was wherever I could breathe. Tomás's daughters began coming to the house more often. They were enchanted by everything. "Grandma, this soap smells like flowers," said the younger one, her hands covered with foam. I laughed, remembering my own children running among the pots and molds so many years ago. It was as if life gently returned to me the good part of motherhood, the playful part, free of charges. One day, the older girl asked me, "Why don't you work at the company anymore?" I thought of all the possible answers but chose the truest, because sometimes we need to say goodbye to what we love, to keep loving ourselves. That phrase stayed with me for days. It echoed in my chest while I watered the plants, washed the dishes, listened to the birds. Maybe that's the great lesson of all this. We give ourselves so much, nullify ourselves so much, that we forget we also have a limit. And when we cross that limit in the name of others, no matter how noble the reasons, something inside us begins to dry. And it was only when I recognized that, when I stopped begging for space in the life I myself had created, that I began to bloom again. Sometimes, I still get emails from the company, called comuniques, with charts, meeting minutes, organizational chart changes. I read them with the same interest. One flips through an old magazine in a waiting room that no longer touches me. It doesn't hurt me, nor does it make me proud. It is just a chapter closed. And I go on in another, one where I can sit on the porch with my hibiscus tea, write letters I never send, and be happy in a way you didn't even know was possible before. A quiet way, but full of presence. A simple way, but profoundly mine. On my 68th birthday, I decided not to throw a party. I just prepared a simple lunch he invited whoever wanted to come, no obligation, no formality. Some neighbors came, the women from the group, Tomás with the girls, and, to my surprise, Marina too. She brought wildflowers wrapped in old newspaper and a cornmeal cake she had made herself. She sat beside me as if she had never left. We spoke little, but it was one of the sweetest days of my life. I looked around and saw sincere faces. People who stayed even after the storm. People who didn't want my name, my position, or my approval, just my company. When everyone left, I was alone in the kitchen washing the dishes, as I used to long ago. The difference is that now I did it in peace. I put a Mercedes Sosa Recordion, opened a cheap red wine, and sat at the table with my notebook. I wrote, "I don't have everything I dreamed of, but I have everything that matters." And I realized that, in the end, maybe the secret of life is this, knowing what matters. Because not every happy ending is made of applause and audience. Sometimes it comes. A beautiful silence, smelling of home-cooked food and the sound of dishes being reheated. As time went by, some people who saw me at the peak started treating me as if I had vanished. "Isabel, you could call me back, you know? The company needs you." I thank them, but I refuse. Because this isn't about pride. It is about coherence. Going back to where they pulled me out without listening to my voice would be like betraying myself. And I no longer accept silencing my story to fit someone else's script. Today, my commitment is to truth. To my truth. And the truth says there are things that, if we don't withdraw, end up eating us from the inside out. Some mornings, I still dream of the factory. I wake up with the smell of lavender stuck in my nose. But instead of longing, I feel gratitude, because everything I lived there brought me Eddie. To this woman who writes calmly, who plants basil with her granddaughters, who teaches other women to reconnect with themselves. E me no longer de. Founder of Essência Rojas. E me just Isabel. E being just Isabel has been my greatest achievement. Recently, I received a letter from Rodrigo, written by hand, which was already a shock itself. He said he was taking a self-knowledge course, that he had been rethinking everything the way he was raised, how he led, how he dealt with me. He said he always admired me, but that admiration turned into charge. E that, deep down, he didn't know how to handle the fact that I remained strong even when he wanted to see me weak. I read the letter 3 times. I cried the third, not out of sadness, but because of a relief I didn't even know I needed to feel. I haven't answered. Not yet. Sometimes the answer is Jimmy. I felt like showing that letter to Eloisa, my friend, the one who was also removed by her children. But I held back, because I understood that each person lives their story at their own pace. And because, deep down, that was between me and the silence I carried for so many years. I kept the letter inside the black notebook where I write definitive decisions. Beside it, I wrote a short sentence. He is trying. That is already a lot. Maybe we'll meet again one day. Maybe not. But I no longer carry the hurt. What remains, now, is only memory. In memory, when it no longer hurts, becomes wisdom. At quartas essência, there is always someone who asks me what I would do differently if I could go back in time. My answer is always the same. I would have listened to myself sooner. I would have chosen myself sooner, because the biggest mistake wasn't trusting my children. It was just trusting my intuition. My body screamed that something was wrong. My heart begged for attention, but I thought love was enough. Today I know, love without listening becomes guilt. Love without presence becomes burden. In a mother, no matter how strong, can carry everything alone for a lifetime. They also ask me if I regret not fighting to keep control of the company. And the answer is no, because I did fight only a different way. I didn't fight to stay where you wasn't wanted. I fought to leave standing. I fought to keep my essence intact. And that was, without doubt, the hardest and most dignified battle I ever faced. Today, when I close my eyes, I don't see myself behind a michi table. I see myself harvesting rosemary, smiling with my granddaughters, teaching a young woman to make soap. That is how I want to be remembered. Not for the company I built, but for the woman I became when everything collapsed. The other day, walking through downtown, I passed in front of one of the old Essência Rojas stores. The window was different, more modern, colder. I didn't recognize the products. The scent coming out of there no longer spoke to me. For a second, I felt a tightening in my chest. But it passed quickly, because I understood that it was no longer mine. And that's okay. Sometimes, the things we create follow paths we were doomed to have chosen. And that doesn't diminish what they were, nor what we were while building them. It only means we've gone in different directions, as it should be. On the way back home, I sat in the square and opened my blue notebook, the one with loose reflections. I wrote, what they took from me was never what defined me. What defines me is what no one can take away. My ability to start over. I closed each with a new tranquility. Not that fake calm of someone swallowing hurts, but the genuine peace of someone living. Truth. When I got home, my granddaughters were waiting on the porch with a pot of paint and flowers picked from the garden. Are you painting soaps today, Grandma? I said yes, because deep down, that is what I wanted. To color the days with what really matters. I have received invitations to tell my story on podcasts, women SE channels, Maturi entrepreneurship events. I accept only the ones that make sense, because today I choose. That, to me, is true success. Not a full schedule, not the titles, but the freedom to say yes calmly. To not need to prove anything to anyone. To live a life that makes sense to me, even if each seems too simple to others. If we spent too much time trying to impress. Now, I just want to find myself, if possible, especially those who have forgotten themselves. Some days is too hurt. Some days I catch myself remembering details I'd rather forget. But now I let them call me. I no longer run from pain, because it taught me more than any success. It taught me to look at myself with more affection, not to beg for affection, not to accept less than I deserve. If my children understand that one day, great. If not, at least one of you has learned. That one is me. That is enough. Another habit I acquired was writing letters I never send. I have a little box that closet with dozens of them, one for each child, others for myself, some written on angry days, others on mornings of longing. I write to understand, to cleanse the heart. Mainly, so that the words don't die stuck, because I learned that swallowing everything makes us sick. When we not heard, we need to listen to ourselves. That is what these letters are. My way of hearing myself, a way not to forget the woman who lives inside the mother, the founder, the strong one. Sometimes the girls my granddaughters ask me to tell that story about the beginning of the soaps. I tell it. I talk about the old stove, the big pots, the smell of lavender taking over the kitchen. I talk about the first fairs, the fear, the faith. They listen with wide eyes, as if each were a fairy tale. Deep though it is, because fairy tales also have witches, falls, betrayal, but they end with the character freeing herself. I freed myself. That is the part I make sure to repeat. In the end, Grandma chose to be happy. They always laugh. I laugh along, because it is true. The other day, Thomas told me, if we had listened more, it would have hurt less. It didn't. And so at the time, but I kept thinking, yes, it would have hurt less. But maybe the pain was necessary, to open our eyes, to clean the excess, to knock out the certainties that made us blind. Sometimes, it is only the break that we understand the value of presence. Sometimes, only emptiness teaches where true affection lives. And if all this served for my children to look at themselves with more humanity, then it wasn't in vain. Today, at 68, I can say I feel whole. Not perfect, not immune to pain, not free from absences, but whole. I look at the past with respect, at the present with presence, and at the future with curiosity. I have simple plans: plant more herbs, write more letters, maybe adopt a dog, teach more women to make soaps, teach my granddaughters to love themselves above all else. Above any other thing, keep choosing myself, because, in the end, the greatest inheritance I leave to children, granddaughters, or anyone who crosses my path is this: the courage not to forget oneself. Days ago, I sat on the porch floor beside the ruby rosemary pots. I began organizing the notebooks that filled over my life. One of them, older, had a faded burgundy cover. Inside, I found a phrase scribbled between grocery bills and production lists. If one day I disappear from it, I want them to know it was for love of myself. I kept looking at it with a lump in my throat. That phrase seemed like a warning from the past. And now, it made perfect sense. It didn't disappear. I withdrew, to find myself again. And that was never escape. It was courage. I receive men's stories from women who went through something similar. Mothers who were set aside, grandmothers ignored, founders erased. They all bring either voices of fatigue I recognize. And whenever I can, I say the same thing. You add to you. Even if they take everything, you add to you. Because they taught us to measure our worth by how useful we are. But the truth is we are valuable even when we no longer fit the plans of others. In that awareness, when each comes, changes everything. It sets us free. It makes us whole. Today, I no longer carry the guilt of having been firm, nor the fear of having been forgotten, because those who truly know me, who respect me, know I didn't do what I did out of revenge. I did it out of respect, out of limits, out of self-love. It was my way of saying enough without shouting, of leaving without slamming the door, of showing that a mother is also a woman, that our founder also feels, that no one, no matter how much they love, is obliged to erase themselves to keep the harmony of those who do to listen. If one day my children want to know where they went wrong, I will say calmly, they erred when they stopped seeing me as a person. Mainly, they erred when they thought I would accept that, because they raised me strong, but forgot that strength also knows how to leave. Each left. Now, from afar, I keep rooting for them, but without giving up myself. Never again. So, if you imagine reading this, and you went through something similar, know this: you are not alone. It is not ingratitude to want peace. It is not selfishness to want respect. It is not weakness to leave. Sometimes, the strongest gesture a woman can have is to stand up from the table, even with a broken heart. I choose not to be dessert on anyone else's plate anymore. That was my choice. Today, sitting on this porch smelling of fennel, I can tell you with all certainty, it was the best I ever made. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Truly, telling this story was like opening a wound already scarred, showing the mark that remained not to cause pain, but to remind that we survive. Sometimes, we survive stronger, more whole. Maybe you too have felt you lost your place inside your own house. Maybe you swallowed silences, tried to stay close even while being pushed away little by little. If that is the case, tell me. I want to hear you. Sometimes, venting to someone who understands is already a first step to rebuilding yourself. If this story made sense to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is going through something similar and needs to remember that leaving this stage can also be an act of love, self-love. If you want to hear more real stories from ordinary people who found courage even in loss, stay around. Life has many voices every time we listen with our hearts. Something inside us changes too.